Firebird is a forbidden love story set in the Soviet Air Force during the Cold War. It's a story of Sergei, his best friend at the base, the assistant to the commander, Luisa, and how they fall in love with a handsome maverick fighter pilot, Roman. And really, their life story based on Sergei's actual true story and autobiography, facing a KGB investigation and ending with the Afghan war.
This film has been a long time in the making. How does it feel for it to finally be able to see the light of day, and for a project you both have been working on for so long that audiences can finally enjoy? Tom, let's go ahead and start with you.
It's really amazing, like, the world is opening up again now, and we can actually share this film like in person with people, as opposed to just being consumed digitally. And I think now more than ever the film is really relevant, like in light with what's going on in the world, and with LGBT issues particularly under fire again. It's going to be really amazing to be able to bring this true story out into the world, and hopefully it kind of allows people to sort of create a greater understanding and a greater love for who they are and who they want to be in love with, and a greater acceptance on the receiving end of those experiencing those individuals who are courageous enough to express themselves
and to be able to share their stories. And Peter, this has obviously from where you grew up, this has a very personal touch. Tell us a little bit about your connection to the story and when you first heard about it.
Well, I first heard about the story about 10 years ago when a friend, the founder of the Black Nights Film Festival, was approached by a Russian journalist showing around this true story. And I read it in my broken Russian language and really just felt that this has to be turned into a movie. At first, I was amazed, how could this story have happened actually at the height of the Cold War in the Russian Air Force? It seemed almost unbelievable. And my connection is really having grown up as a young boy still under the Soviet occupation, and even remembering those meets from that Air Force base, because our summer cottage was just a few miles away. So they were zooming overhead, and little did I know at the time that I'd be making a movie one day about this Air Force base and those planes. So it's a very personal connection for me, and really it's just such a heartwarming, touching, tragic love story.
And Tom, I want to go ahead and ask you, so Sergei was alive when he heard about his autobiography being turned into a movie. He's since passed, but how closely did you work with him, and what message did you get from him that you definitely wanted to portray in the film?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty extraordinary experience to be able to meet the person that you're going to play in real life, and obviously extend their story and leave a legacy for him. And we got to spend some days getting to know him in Moscow, and we interviewed him over those days, and went for some dinners, and just really got to know him as a person. And he was such a warm, bold, courageous person, and that's the kind of the sort of aspects that I really hope that I kind of pull through really in the film, is this quality which he had, which was this kind of relentlessness of love, and how he even when it gets to the point in the film where Sergei looks like everything all is lost, basically, he's still kind of going, we can still make this work, we can still figure this out. And most people probably would have given up there, but actually this was the same sort of energy that I met when I met him in person, which was just a really bold and courageous person.
I think everybody has their own journey, their own pathway to acceptance. And what I learned from the film is that other people had different barriers and different things they had to overcome, but Sergei was himself. He wanted to live his truth. He wanted to share his truth. He wanted to be happy. And I think it's just an inspiration for somebody in during the height of the Cold War to be able to take that message away for film audiences today.
Yeah, I mean, that's a kind of hope and sort of vein that I really hope people would take away from it, that actually there's this sort of unlocking which Sergei experiences through getting to know Roman, as he's a little bit more sort of like tentative before that. But then sort of after this initial step being taken, he really kind of comes into his, like, I guess his like power and his like heart, and he really does wear his heart on his sleeve like a lot more than he certainly does at the beginning of the movie. And again, I hope that that's something which people can take away and, you know, dare to live a little bit more boldly.
Oh, exactly. And Peter, I want to go ahead and ask you a little bit about the character of Roman, played by an actor by the name of Oleg, who has connections in Moscow. I mean, obviously not giving too much away in the film, but, you know, Sergei has a, you know, deep love for the ballet and for the theater. And this is almost the same background that Oleg, you know, has in his professional life. Talk a little bit about finding him and to be a part of this, about this film.
Well, we set out with a very clear intention that we want to cast the best person for the role. So we actually auditioned together with Tom all of the actors whom our casting director selected. And there was quite a huge search. We had about 2,500 self-tapes for the lead roles. And after months of casting, we were already getting a bit worried. It was May and we started shooting in September, and we still hadn't found the person who would be like, wow, we had some amazing actors, but it's about the feeling of the person often. It's about the fit to the actual real life character. And when Oleg walked in the room, I think all of us said, or thought at least instantly, that that's him. Except that he didn't really speak English much at the time.
So yeah, so that was the one little hurdle, but I mean, there's so many other ways that we can, you know, communicate. And let's talk a little bit about the connection that you had with Oleg, Tom, as far as filming the movie and, you know, wanting to portray this relationship and the struggles that each of them had and trying to make their love and their relationship work. What was it like to prepare, you know, with him for this role?
Well, I think honestly speaking, like one of the significant advantages actually we had, which looked actually and was sort of displayed like a challenge, was the fact that we couldn't have this very clear flow of conversation, because obviously I didn't speak Russian, he didn't speak really English. So it actually meant that there was a lot of like ambiguity like between us for a lot of the time. And, you know, this is like really to the film's benefit, where we're talking about a time where there is no language to be able to describe the feelings in which these two guys are going through at the time. Like nowadays, there's a language in which, you know, we can all use in a rhetoric where we can sort of say what we're into and what we want. But like that just simply didn't exist at the time. And so I think it actually comes to the advantage that actually there is still like an element which we didn't get to know each other that well. Which actually serves the story to a degree, because, you know, again, something to do with the Soviet Union, and people were a little more guarded as well, like during this time, like, you know, living in a totalitarian system, it's very hard to know who to trust fully as well. So I think it's the kind of combination, like sometimes life sets up a challenge which ends up kind of coming across in sort of quite a curious and quite unexpectedly successful way.
Yeah, and Peter, I want to go ahead and ask you, you know, obviously when we see movies about LGBT people in the past, or we see movies about the civil rights movement here, especially here in the States, is that you hope that there's progress. You hope that, you know, when you watch this movie about something that happened 30, 40 years ago, that things have changed. But, you know, kind of seeing what's happening there now and, you know, some of the backlash that was, you know, with the initial premiere of the movie in Russia, I mean, how does it feel to be able to, you know, tell the story, but also still see that a lot of the challenges that they were facing are still being faced today?
Well, I think that's why it's important to tell such stories, and why it's like amazing that we speak about it, because in the Western world, in America and Western Europe, we still have a lot of intolerance. We still have a lot of kind of hidden, suppressed hate and racism, but it's getting better. There's hope, at least. It's important that we support them, and it's important that we, I think, all are aware that in most of the world, things are still in a very tough situation for our communities.
Yeah, I think it definitely brings up the conversation of, you know, things were tough back then, things are tough now, but we have to continue the struggle, continue to bring out visibility and continue, to fight for equal rights, because that's the way things are going to be able to change in the future. And then Tom, I wanted to go ahead and ask you, this is, to some is being described as, a gay version of Top Gun. And, there's a lot of, films where I think where people, may see it because of, of certain actors or certain storylines, but this is something that we normally don't see, especially the backdrop of the Cold War. Let people know why this is such an important film.
Yes, it combines like a number of kind of more unusual elements together. Like a forbidden love story is not necessarily set in a military war backdrop. And so I think dare I say there's a little bit of something for everyone. I've like grown up on sort of thrillers and James Bond and Jason Bourne and sort of Tintin and things like that. And like, that's always been like sort of my genre and I love. But I think that, taking real examples of real relationships and real drama and actually putting it into that context makes a really, really interesting combination, which I'd say that most people probably haven't necessarily seen before.
Tom and Peter, much success, with this film, and thanks for chatting with me today.
Thanks
for having us.